March 1, 2026. Day 1 of Operation Phantom Spear. Iran's naval inventory stands at roughly 250 to 300 vessels across its two fleets. A combination of frigates, corvettes, patrol boats, mine warfare ships, midget submarines, and auxiliary support platforms. Not a global navy by any measure, but a regional force optimized for one singular objective: dominate the Strait of Hormuz and hold commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf hostage. 2 weeks later, more than 60 Iranian warships sunk or crippled. Frontline combat vessels erased. Naval logistics centers reduced to rubble. Swarm boat formations wiped out. Mine warfare capability gutted. According to General Michael Kurilla, head of U.S. Central Command, Iran's naval power has functionally ceased to exist. The complete unraveling of a nation's entire maritime force in under 14 days. And it forces one unavoidable question. How did this happen so quickly? The answer isn't simply American bombs. It's strategy. It's doctrine. And it's decades of Iranian overconfidence finally catching up with them. Because Iran spent 40 years building a navy for one type of conflict, and the United States just forced them into an entirely different fight. This is the story of how Iran's navy was broken in 10 days, and why rebuilding it may take a generation. Before Operation Phantom Spear commenced, Iran's naval thinking rested on a single pillar: asymmetric warfare. They knew they could never outmatch the US Navy in open water. So they didn't bother trying. Instead, they constructed a force designed to exploit geography, overwhelm with numbers, deploy naval mines, and threaten to shut down the Strait of Hormuz the moment conflict erupted. The logic was straightforward. You don't need a blue water fleet if you can turn a critical maritime choke point into a kill zone. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest passage. And through that narrow passage flows nearly 20% of the world's daily oil consumption. Iran's entire naval doctrine was built around this geographic reality. If they could make a credible threat to seal the strait, they gained leverage. Leverage over global energy markets. Leverage over regional adversaries. Leverage over Washington. So Iran built a navy specifically for that job. Hundreds of fast attack boats designed to swarm and overwhelm. Coastal anti-ship missile batteries dug into the shoreline. Naval mines that could be scattered across the strait within hours. Small submarines built for shallow water ambushes. And more recently, unmanned surface vessels, drone boats packed with explosives, essentially guided munitions riding on water. Iran even institutionalized this separation into two parallel naval forces. The Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, or IRIN, maintained a conventional fleet for prestige and occasional power projection. Frigates, corvettes, support ships, vessels that gave the appearance of a traditional navy but were never intended for sustained high-intensity combat. Then there was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGC Navy. This was Iran's real weapon. Built exclusively for harassment, denial, and asymmetric warfare inside the Gulf. Fast boats. Missiles. Mines, drones. Everything engineered to make the strait too dangerous to transit. And for years, that strategy worked. Iran ran exercises showing fast attack boats emerging from underground tunnels. They released propaganda footage of swarm formations overwhelming a mock enemy vessel. They tested anti-ship missiles. They laid mines. They harassed tankers. The threat was so credible that insurance premiums for ships entering the Gulf skyrocketed. That's the logic of asymmetric warfare. You don't need to win a naval battle. You just need to make the cost of operating too high. Then Operation Phantom Spear began. Within 10 days, the entire framework collapsed. The first major blow came against the IRIS Dena, a Mouj-class frigate and one of Iran's most capable surface combatants. Armed with anti-ship missiles, radar systems, and helicopter facilities, the Dena represented the conventional face of Iran's navy. On March 4th, a US Navy submarine tracked it in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Oman as it returned from naval exercises. A Mark 48 torpedo struck below the waterline. The frigate went down. Dozens of personnel lost. A handful rescued. It marked the first sinking of a major warship by an American submarine in over 80 years. And it sent an unmistakable message. No Iranian vessel is safe anywhere. What followed was a systematic campaign against Iranian naval infrastructure. The IRIS Shahid Mahdavi, a converted commercial vessel retrofitted as a drone carrier, was obliterated while moored at Bandar Abbas. This wasn't just a ship, it was Iran's attempt to project unmanned aerial capabilities onto the sea. US and Israeli precision strikes destroyed it before it could ever launch a single drone. The IRIS Makran, a massive converted tanker serving as a floating forward operating base and logistics hub, was crippled in the opening days of the campaign. The Makran was the centerpiece of Iran's expeditionary ambitions, a mobile platform for drones, helicopters, and special operations forces. That capability is now gone. The IRIS Jamaran, a domestically built corvette equipped with missiles and air defense systems, was destroyed during the initial strikes on naval facilities. The Sahand and Savalin frigates, older but still operational surface combatants, were both struck in follow-up attacks. These were not minor assets. They were the backbone of Iran's conventional surface fleet. But the US didn't stop with major warships. American forces specifically targeted the asymmetric capabilities that formed the core of Iranian naval doctrine. According to US Central Command, 16 mine-laying vessels were destroyed in and around the Strait of Hormuz. These ships were designed to rapidly seed mines across the strait's shipping lanes. Another 10 mine vessels were struck while still in port. That's 26 mine layers eliminated. Iran's ability to conduct mine warfare, one of its most dangerous asymmetric tools, was effectively erased. Fast attack craft, the small boats used in swarm tactics, were hit just as hard. Hundreds of them. Some destroyed while on patrol. Others struck at their moorings. These vessels were central to Iran's strategy of overwhelming larger warships through sheer numbers. Without them, the IRGC Navy loses its primary offensive punch inside the Gulf. Satellite imagery released during the campaign showed the scale of devastation. Naval bases cratered. Docking facilities collapsed. Fuel storage depots in flames. Command centers flattened. By March 11, General Kurilla confirmed that more than 60 Iranian vessels had been destroyed or disabled. Out of a total fleet of roughly 250 to 300 ships, nearly a quarter of Iran's navy erased in less than 2 weeks. The remainder scattered, disorganized, and largely confined to port. So why did Iran's navy collapse so quickly? 3 reasons. Geography. Doctrine. Miscalculation. First, geography. Iran built its navy to fight inside the Persian Gulf, a confined, shallow body of water where narrow distances and coastal terrain can neutralize the advantages of a superior force. Islands, choke points, coastal missile batteries. It's an environment that favors small, fast vessels over large warships. But Operation Phantom Spear didn't start in the Gulf. It started from the air. And air power doesn't care about narrow straits or shallow waters. US and Israeli strike aircraft hit Iranian naval bases from above, destroying ships while they were still docked, obliterating infrastructure before vessels could even get underway. Iran's geographic advantages became irrelevant the moment the fight moved to the vertical dimension. Second, doctrine. Iran's entire naval strategy was defensive and reactive. Threaten the strait if attacked. Deploy mines if necessary. Swarm enemy vessels if they enter the Gulf. A doctrine built on deterrence, not offensive action. The problem? Deterrence only works if the other side believes the threat. Once Operation Phantom Spear began, the United States called Iran's bluff. Instead of waiting for Iran to close the strait, American forces preemptively destroyed the capability to do so. Mine layers hit before they could deploy. Fast boats struck before they could swarm. Coastal batteries targeted before they could fire. Iran's reactive doctrine never had a chance to activate. Third, miscalculation. Iran believed its asymmetric arsenal would make an American attack too costly. That the threat of closing the Strait of Hormuz would deter military action. That even if strikes occurred, the IRGC Navy could inflict enough damage on commercial shipping to force a ceasefire. They were wrong. The US didn't just attack Iran's navy. It systematically dismantled the entire infrastructure supporting it: fuel depots, maintenance facilities, command nodes, communications networks. Without that support structure, even the ships that survived cannot operate effectively. There's historical precedent here. In April 1988, the US Navy destroyed roughly half of Iran's conventional fleet in a single day during Operation Praying Mantis. That attack was retaliation for Iran mining the Gulf and damaging an American warship. The losses were so severe that Iran abandoned conventional naval ambitions entirely. That's when the pivot to asymmetric warfare began. For nearly 4 decades, that asymmetric doctrine worked. Until Operation Phantom Spear proved it didn't. But here's the critical nuance. Even with Iran's conventional navy effectively collapsed, the threat hasn't disappeared. Because Iran still retains assets the US hasn't fully neutralized. Coastal anti-ship missile batteries positioned along the Gulf. Small unmanned surface vessels, drone boats, hidden in underground facilities. Fast attack craft that survived the initial strikes. And the demonstrated willingness to use all of them. On March 11th, Iranian forces struck the M5 Olympic Honor, a Liberian-flagged crude oil tanker, as it attempted to transit the Strait of Hormuz. Photos from the evacuation showed impact damage near the waterline, a signature of explosive-laden drone boats. The attack didn't sink the vessel, but it sent a clear signal. Even without a functioning navy, Iran can still disrupt shipping. Fabian Hinz, a military analyst at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, put it bluntly, while Iran's conventional navy is largely combat ineffective at this point, the IRGC navy retains the ability to threaten commercial shipping. That creates a level of risk that shipping companies and insurers will find unacceptable. That's the new reality. Iran doesn't need a functioning navy to close the Strait of Hormuz. It just needs to make transit dangerous enough that commercial vessels refuse to risk it. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. The strait is effectively closed, not because Iran controls it militarily, but because the threat environment is too severe for commercial operators. Reza Mirzai, a former Iranian naval commander, told Iran International, "In my assessment, Iran doesn't need to lay mines at the entrance to the Persian Gulf right now. The reason ships aren't passing through is simple: companies understand the probability of being hit is extremely high." He pointed to Iranian drone capabilities positioned near Keshem, Hormuz, and Larak Islands, all situated along major maritime transit corridors, as the most immediate danger. These drones don't require a navy. They're launched from shore, controlled remotely, and small enough to evade detection until the final moment. It's the same tactic Ukraine used against Russia's Black Sea Fleet, small unmanned boats packed with explosives, striking larger vessels at the waterline. Experts note that Iranian versions are less sophisticated than Ukraine's, but in the confined waters of the Gulf, sophistication matters less than numbers and surprise. So Iran's conventional navy is gone. But the asymmetric threat remains. And that threat alone is enough to keep the strait closed. The strategic implications are profound. Iran has lost the ability to project naval power beyond the Gulf. The destruction of vessels like the Makran and Shahid Mahdavi ended Iran's expeditionary ambitions. No more long-range deployments. No more drone carriers operating in the Arabian Sea. No more floating forward bases. Iran's navy is now a coastal defense force at best, and even that capability is severely degraded. Rebuilding will take decades. Iran doesn't have the industrial capacity to replace 60 vessels quickly. Most of its major warships were either imported decades ago or built domestically using outdated designs. The Mouj-class frigates, for example, are based on British designs from the 1960s. Iran's shipbuilding industry is limited. Sanctions prevent the import of modern naval technology. And the expertise required to design and build advanced warships takes years to cultivate. Even if Iran began reconstruction today, restoring even a fraction of what was lost would take 10 to 15 years minimum. And that assumes available resources, an assumption that grows less plausible by the day. Iran's economy is crumbling under sanctions and the strain of conflict. Oil exports are down. Revenue is shrinking. The regime is struggling to maintain basic functions. Naval reconstruction is not a priority when the system itself is fighting for survival. So what's left? A limited submarine force, mostly small coastal boats designed for defensive operations. Shore-based missile batteries requiring constant resupply. A handful of fast attack craft hidden in underground facilities. And drones. Lots of drones. That's Iran's navy now. Not a fleet. A collection of residual assets trying to sustain a threat that is more psychological than tactical. But even in this diminished state, it's enough to keep global oil markets on edge. Because the Strait of Hormuz remains too dangerous for commercial transit. And until that changes, Iran retains some leverage. Not the leverage it had before, but enough to matter. So here's the question. Did the United States achieve its objective? Iran's conventional navy is effectively destroyed. The threat to close the strait has been neutralized militarily. But the economic impact, soaring oil prices, disrupted supply chains, market instability, is exactly what Iran wanted. So who actually won? Did Iran lose a navy but gain a crisis? Or did the US dismantle a threat while walking into a trap? Drop your answer in the comments. This is Naval Strategy in Real Time. If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe. We're covering the strategic lessons, the tactical decisions, and the long-term implications of this conflict. And if you want to support the channel, join the fleet. Loyalty badges, priority updates, exclusive military analysis, click join and get on board. Iran's navy collapsed in 10 days. But the war isn't over. And the lessons from this collapse will reshape naval doctrine for a generation. I'll see you in the next one.